Our app has loaded. You'll see now that we navigated to our sign up. If we click here, we'll navigate to our login. We can go back to our sign up. We can use our nav buttons in Android. And now we actually have our edit text with our login. Quick and easy. We can go to our password. You'll see here that everything is hinted just like a password. Let's assume we're logging in. Let's assume this is verified. And we reach our home page. Welcome to Export Kit. In this example, we're going to create a prototype Android app for mobile, in essence, using this simple design here. So we have a couple of pages in our, or I should say actually artboards in our project, which will convert to Android activities. So the first one is our splash screen, which in essence has a sign up and a login. We have our register, or our sign up page, which has a couple of input elements, for instance, text, email, and also a password. And this will, in essence, bring us, once they sign up, to our home with a little bit of information there. Other than that, we also have our login page, also with a couple input parameters. Now, both the login and the sign up page, you'll notice at the bottom, should also relink to each other. So we're just going to ensure that in the output as well. So let's begin by first, we're going to export this app as is for Android, and then we're going to create basically all the functionality we need to prototype it to map to each page. So let's go ahead and start that. So the first thing we want to do, and let's just ensure our Android folder has no projects, we're just going to start a new project. And for simplicity's sake, let's call it my application. No activity, because we're going to import all the elements. And then we can just have Android build. So while we're doing that, we can go back to our project in XD, and we're just going to simply export an Android UI app. Now, once we go to the folder, what we're going to have to do is we're going to copy our manifest. Now, if this is Windows that you're using, you can simply drag and drop the contents of this folder, of your output folder. But for Mac, you're going to have to do a little bit of manual copying. So the first thing, once we're inside our applications, we're going to navigate to App, Source, Main. We're going to paste our manifest. And what we want to do is we want to replace the existing one. Then we're going to copy our res and our Java, go back to our main within our project, and we're going to want to paste these, apply all, and merge. Now once this is done, what we can do is we can go now back to Android Studio, and we can go to our layouts, and we'll see each of the pages that we have from our XD app. So you'll see we have home, login, register, splash. We have home, login, register, splash. So let's just simply load our first one. Now, a very important thing with Android before I go any further, layer names are extremely important. There are a lot of rules with Android in regards to naming conventions. You cannot have names such as new, continue, class. These are all registered and reserved names with Android Studio. So Android Studio will not allow you to use these names when you compile. This will work with HTML and JavaScript because you're using IDs, but this will not work with Android as it creates variables with those classes. So that being said, what we can do is, I was actually hoping Android would have rebuilt in the time frame that I was speaking, but it didn't. So let's just run this really quick, and when it's complete, what we'll see is all the elements from our design. We'll do a quick QA, and then we'll build the application, and then we'll also remap so that we can actually add navigation and functionality to it. So if we zoom in a little, you can see it's still just creating. So it's loaded and you'll see we have our content. Now, based on the screen that we're targeting, there's a little bit of gray area and this will be noted in the output, but we're not worried about that right now. We could edit that later with better target screens. So for now, this is just to show you that the application will create, will render, and also will apply the functionality that we add to it. So you can see we have all our content from our design. Let's just QA it again. Our login. So this is our login page, and this is our login page on Android. Okay, so it's QA'd. We can look at the home. You'll see that we have all our content. So that being said, we have the content we require. Let's go ahead and let's quickly run this. Let's go to a pixel. Now you will need to create a virtual device or plug in your own device to, in essence, test your app. So let's just let this build. Now we're only going to see the splash page when this is complete, and that's because we do not have functionality applied to our project to add navigation to each page. So we're going to need to create this within XD. Yes, this is still loading, so we can just go ahead and do that in the meanwhile. Now to add our navigation, you can see Gradle has no errors, so it will be complete shortly. In essence, what we have to do is use link tag, and we can use link tag with layers, or we can create a class with our folder button. So I'm going to just do basic navigation just to show you how we can easily prototype an app. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add an action to this button right here. So we're going to be able to click the button to go to another page. And let's let it go to the register page. We're going to add an action to this button so that it can go to our login page. Now let's see if it's completed rendering. Okay, Google's still loading. And on our register page, we're going to deal with the actual input elements afterwards. We want this button, once they've signed up, we're not verifying. Want this to go to home. We also want this, when clicked, to go to our login page. Now if we go over to our login, the action we want for this button is to go to home. And again, we're not verifying any of the information. This you'd have to do within your code itself. And we want this to navigate back to our register. So in essence, what we've done now is we've created two links, one to our register, one to our home page, assuming that they've logged in. In our actual register page, we've created one to our home again, assuming they've signed up correctly, and another one back to the login. And also within our splash page, we have two links, one to the register and one to the login. So now this will allow us to navigate through our Android app while testing. So let's just see what rendered first. So you'll see here we have the information that we're looking for. This is our actual application. Okay, so now again, there's no functionality that we assign, so this does nothing when we click. So let's just simply close that. Oh, whoops, I didn't want to save that state. Let's go back to Android. Now, for argument's sake, it's a lot faster if you simply just recreate the application rather than try to modify each element. And this is for beginners. If you're more experienced in Android, you could simply just recopy the elements, and afterwards you could modify your manifest. But for argument's sake, let's just create a brand new project once more. No activity because we're going to import this. And while Android is building, let's just export our entire project. Let's go to our new folder. So once more, we want to copy the manifest. Now again, if this is Windows, you can do a simple drag and drop and merge. But for Apple, we're going to have to be a little bit more specific. So we're going to navigate to App Source Main. We're going to paste our manifest and replace. We're going to go back to our output folder, copy our Java and our res. Head back to our main. We're going to paste these two items, apply to all, and we're going to merge. Now once this is done, we can simply head back to Android once more to our res and our layout. Let's look at our splash page. Let's rebuild. Now while this is building, we can just take a quick look at Java. And in our activities, again, layer naming is important because you're going to note that you get, in essence, a variable for each of your layer names. So you cannot have layer names such as new, continue, private, public, class, etc. These are reserved by Android. Now, once we added our link, what ExportKit will do is create an intent for that activity itself. So this will allow us to prototype our navigation within our actual app from XD. So let's just check if it's completed building. Let's just wait a second for everything to load. And it hasn't loaded yet. Let's rebuild once more. Okay, there we go. So now we have all our content loaded, and you'll see that if you run into the error also where after you rebuild it hasn't loaded, just simply rebuild the application once more. So we are going to note that we still have that gray space. We didn't correct it within our actual output. We could do that by redefining our screen size, our actual artboard size, so it maps in essence perfectly with our target I would say device. So you will need to map each screen size for device, but that's something I'll cover in another video. Right now we're just running the application. We can see here we have all our layouts. We've already covered that we have our intents. So what we're going to do now is we're simply going to run and we're going to test the prototyping. So let's go to a pixel once more. And let's just wait for this to load. Yeah, shouldn't be mapping away while this is building. You're going to get that error at times. So our app has loaded. You'll see now that we navigated to our sign up. If we click here, we'll navigate to our login. We can go back to our sign up. We can use our nav buttons in Android. Let's assume we're logging in. Let's assume this is verified. And we reach our home page. Now once more, we would need to resize the project so it better fits the target device, but that's something that we can do separately inside our design. So you can see quick and easily we were able to prototype a project. So the next step that we're going to do is we're going to add a little bit of edit text just so we can test that also. So let's go back, we can close this. Now that we have edit text within, you know what, let's actually create the classes. Oops. Let's create the classes on our login. This might be better used. And for the password, oh, these are ellipses. So these are some mistakes that a lot of users might do within their design where they're actually using a design rather than text. Um, I didn't realize that. These are ellipses. Okay, so this wouldn't work for the password over here. Let's just modify that quickly. You know what? Let's work only with the login. It's two elements. So you got to be very specific in your design. You can see here where visually did not equal actually. And that being said, what that is that creating ellipses to mimic password input is not the best thing to do. You're better off just creating the text. Let the developer work with the password. So we're just going to go in here and we're going to remove this. Let's actually just paste this down. So let's call that password. Let's give the input type a password. Let's remove these ellipses because they are not required. Okay, so now we're going to have two widgets that should be edit text in the output, and let's go ahead and let's test that. So we'll return to Android. We have our output complete. We're going to delete this project and we're just going to simply rebuild a new one. Actually, a quick mistake I just realized I made was that I need to add a pipe, not a colon, after class. Just saw that. Otherwise, we're going to get an error in our output, so let's just avoid the error. So we need a class, edit text, and the properties afterwards. So the properties that we have are we have an input type text, but we can actually just remove for the text. We're not going to need that. And then input type password for our password itself. So let's go ahead and re-export this project and then let's take a look at the output. So once we have these copied over, we'll simply go to our res, to our layout. Let's take a look in design view. Let's rebuild. Okay, so we made an error within our class, and this is something important. So we're gonna be able to fix this really quickly. What we should have done was only added text password as the property, simply because one of the rules of our Android export is when you're using a native layer, such as a text layer with an edit text, it will actually just use the properties you assign. So we're gonna fix this quickly. Now, if we were doing this on a shape, we would have needed to actually add the correct input type. But because we're doing this only on a text layer, we can simply just add text password for the edit text. So with this correction, we can re-export and test our project. Once we have our items copied over, we can go back and take a look at our project once again. Let's go to design view. Let's rebuild to ensure there are no errors. And then let's run our application and we should have our edit text with our correct properties along with our navigation. Okay, so everything loaded, there are 0 errors. Let's simply run this. Okay, let's assume it's loaded. So you'll see we can navigate, but we're going to go to our login. And now we actually have our edit text with our login. Quick and easy. But you'll see now the edit text did not go to the size that we expected, because it was a little bit more centered. So you will have to play around at times. Let's assume this is what we want. We can go to our password. You'll see here that everything is hinted just like a password. And this will now allow us to verify within our actual code. Oops, let's just get off that. Let's assume we're going to log in. And there you go, we're at our home page. So quick and easy prototyping. Using Export Kit and Adobe XD, you can create virtually any Android app quick and easily. Now note, Android is an advanced export, so you will have to have some knowledge of Android before you begin to create functionality within your application. But you can simply ask any question within the comments and we'll be happy to answer basically anything that you would like to know. We have a lot of information. There will be tutorials that you will likely need to read so that you can create the widgets that you're expecting. But you can see here, you can create virtually anything.